আচ্ছা, শুরু করার আগে আমি রান করে নিই যাতে অসুবিধা না হয়। Okay, so welcome back again to Free Code Tutor, and today's topic is again React. You're working on React.js, and let's see the table of discussions. These are some methods in props. So till now we have passed only data like values or data to in props, but right now from today we'll be learning how to pass methods through props. And after that we'll learn about conditional rendering, and then we'll start listing, and after that we'll know details in fragments. And after that, as we are always having question and answer sessions, that is totally the student and teacher or the presenter or the other members communications, and that's it. So let's start into the code. So as you can see, I have already run the code through my terminal in the editor, and before I go anywhere, so let's create one component from here, and I'll name it as parent component. So first of all, I'm going to take a class component over here, and for class component I will import a React and then the component from React. I will declare the class parent component, which extends component now we'll export this one. So export default parent component. So what we are going to do, we are going to create one method over here, and we'll exchanging props from parent to child. But before I proceed, I should create a constructor over here so that I can have a state properties inside constructor. So let's write constructor, and as it is, I'm getting props over here. Then super method, so props, and then the state, this dot state, and here I'm going to have some message or some value. I'll say parent name, which will be for now parent. Now we should render this, so render method, and inside render we'll have return. I'm going to return a div over here, That's it. And simply one message saying this dot state dot parent name, and we'll import this component in our app.js. Let's import over here, import parent component from the same path, component slash parent component, and we call this component over here. I'm going to comment this out and simply paste parent component over here. Okay, there's some spelling mistake over here, so it will be props. So as you can see, it is only showing that message or that key which is written inside the state. It is saying that parent, so it is working as it is expected. Now we should create a method over here, or let's name it greet parent, and then inside this function I'm going to say alert. I'll use backticks over here, and then hello, and then dollar this dot state dot parent name. And before I use this, so I will create one child component also over here. So let's create one component file over here and name it as child component .js. And this child component I'm going to use as functional component. So import React from React. Now there will be a function constant child component inside here props, and then fat arrow symbol. That's it. And now I'm going to export it. Export default child component. Now inside child component I'll use return, and inside return I will have one button which basically have greet parent text, and function I'm going to declare over here is onClick method, and then props dot greet handler. I'm going to define this in parent component, so let me write it down over here first. Okay, so now let's go back to parent component and let's import that child component. Import child component from child component, and I'm going to use this component instead of this h1 tag. So I'm going to comment this out, and I'll use child component, sorry, it will be component like this, and here I'm going to have that greet handler which we have written in child component, greet handler which equals to this dot greet parent. Now from our previous class we know that this will not work, so we have to bind this in our constructor. So this dot greet parent equals to this dot greet parent dot bind, and then we have to bind this over here. Alright, now I think it should work. So let's see in the browser what is happening right now. So if I click over here, I'm getting an alert which is saying hello parent. So basically this button is in our child component, and inside child component we are getting this greet handler from parent component, like a property. So greet handler equals to this dot greet parent, like a property. Whenever we send like string value, something like that, so we can send value of methods in a property. Now from here what I'll do, I'll send a parameter from this click functionality. To send the parameter I need a arrow function. So on click, then set arrow symbol props.greet handler, and at the end I'm going to have a parenthesis. Inside parenthesis I'm going to send a word. So for now let's send child. Now we have to catch this child inside our parent component. So I'll define over here like child value, and we have to show it in this alert. So from dollar child value. Now let's see in our browser what is happening. As you can see, we are calling this child from our child component as a parenthesis, and we are showing it in our parent. So this is how we send methods as a props. Now let's come to our next topic, which is basically let me see which is conditional rendering. So from the keyword, as you can understand, conditional rendering means we are going to render same amount of data but conditionally. So it is more likely to happen for a developer that some data need to be shown for in a certain condition. So for that I'm going to create one component file over here, and I'll name it as user greetings .js. Now I'm going to declare it as a class component. So import React and then the component from React. That's it. Now I'm going to define the class user greeting extends component like this, and let me export this. So export default and the class name user greeting like this. Now we should add a constructor function over here. So constructor inside props, and inside constructor let's call the super method, and then again props, and under super method I'm going to set a state. It will have a this dot state equals to is logged in, a boolean value I'm going to pass over here. So the value is right now false. Alright, now let's render this one, render, and inside render I'm going to have return, and inside return I'm going to take a div method, div element, and here I'm going to define welcome guest. So what I'm going to do is, if it is not logged in, so basically if this keyword is false, I'm going to display this message, welcome guest. Otherwise, if it is true, I'm going to display something else, like welcome the name of the person or user. So conditional rendering is if else conditional rendering. So before I write if else conditional rendering, I must tell you there are 4 types of conditional renderings. So first one is if else, second one is element variable, third one is ternary conditional operator, and fourth one is short circuit operator. So right now we are going to focus on if else conditional rendering. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to write a condition if this dot state dot is logged in, and then I'm going to return the whole as welcome user. Otherwise, I'm going to return welcome guest. Now I should call this in our app.js to know how it is working. So let's import it first over here, user greeting, and then over here user greeting, and over here same way user greeting. Now let's look at our browser. So it is showing welcome guest. Now if I change the value over here from false to true, and we're expecting to see welcome guest, welcome user, now it is working as expected. So this is how if else condition happens, but I'm going to tell you more details over here. So this is the one of the most easiest process of conditional rendering, but there must be a question that why can't we add if else inside JSX? That means inside this return method. And the answer will be JSX is only syntactic sugar for function call and object construction. So what we have to do for if else kind of statement, we have to return the whole return method or whole JSX if we are using if else condition. I'm going to comment this out, and let's move further for the next approach, which is element variable. So from the words you have understood, element variable means we are going to declare a variable, and we are going to use that variable conditionally. So let's take a variable let message, which is undefined right now. So let me use the condition over here. So if this dot state dot is logged in, so message should be the same thing, welcome user. I'm going to have it in one line so that copy pasting should be easier, or else we're going to have welcome guest. Now we have to return this variable, message variable. Now let's look at our browser. Okay, so there is some error over here. So let me check what kind of error I'm facing right now. So let message equals to message, and if this dot state is logged in, we are defining message as welcome user. That's correct. Else something like that. Okay, expected. Okay, so there is no message over here. So message equals to welcome guest. Alright, so as the key is logged in is true, so we are seeing welcome user, but if I change it to false, and if I see, it has changed to welcome guest. So that is the element variable. Now let's move forward for the next conditional approach, which is ternary operator or ternary conditional operator. So to understand this, how ternary works, so let me write over here ternary operator. So the basic idea is there is a state, and if this state, depending on state, we are going to show something. So state, if it is true, then the value we are going to show over is a true value, and which is related to true value. Else, for else we are using colon, else we are going to send else value. So let's write it. So I'm going to write return this dot state dot is logged in. So this is the state of our ternary operator. If it is true, I'm going to send whatever we want to show in a true value. So I'm going to take this return parenthesis, and over here I'm going to copy paste this welcome user. Else I'm going to send the guest. So again parenthesis and welcome guest. So now the keyword is logged in is false, so we are seeing welcome guest. Now if I change it to true, we will see welcome user. So as we are going forward from if else to ternary, this line of coding getting decreased. So now let me comment this line again. Now let's move forward to our last conditional rendering method, which is known as short circuit. So so short circuit is a very simple one. So if I write, you will understand how this will work. So return, I'm going to returning the statement first, which is state dot is logged in. So it's basically maybe true or false. So depending on that, if it is logged in, I'm going to send div and welcome user. That's it. So we are only functioning with the true value over here. So the statement over here is, if the left hand side is true, it will return some value, otherwise it will return nothing. So let me check what it returns if we are setting it to false. As you can see, there is nothing returned in our browser. Also check the console if there is some error or not. No, there is no error. These are only warning. These warnings are basically the other components which we have imported in our app.js but not defined. So we can ignore this for the moment. But let's check our elements also, what it is returning. In our element there is nothing as returned, so it basically is not returning the whole component. So that's it for the conditional statement, conditional rendering. Now we should move forward and what we are going to do is we are going to create a basic list of React.js. So for that, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create another component and I'll name it as namelist.js, like this, and it will be a functional component. So I'm going to import React from React, and now the function name constant namelist equals to the fat arrow symbol, and that's it. Now I'm going to export this, export default namelist. Alright, now inside namelist I need to return something, so I'm returning div tag, and here I want to write hello list. Now let me call this component in app.js. Let's comment it out. Now name list, and here also name list. Failed to compile. React must be in scope of, okay. React must be, okay, name is 5, line number 5, it is returning, but let me check it again. Something problem with this return, 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 it's okay, perfect, but why not it's returning anything? Fat arrow symbol, constant, export default name list, and then I think I'm missing some. Let me compare to other. No, it's same, but still it's not returning. Okay, the React spelling is not correct over here. Now if you look at our browser, it's returning as expected. Alright, now I'm going to take a list of names. So constant names should be an array which will have some common names like John, Mary, and maybe Steve, something like that. And for rendering list we can have options like if I use h1 tag like this, and inside curly braces I can have names and then the index number, and if I copy it for 3 times, 1 and 2 the index numbers, I guess we can have the same view like John, Mary and Steve. But this is not the smart way to render a list. For smart way we can completely comment out these lines, and instead of these lines I can use the map function of JavaScript, so which is basically like inside a div, and I'm going to take a curly braces like this, and then the names dot map method over here, and inside map method I'm going to take a local variable. This variable name, whatever you want you can take, but the recommendation is to take a variable name which is similar to the um, uh, functionalities, so that user can understand what it is. And then I want to return h2, and inside h2 I have to take again the curly braces and then name. This name represents this variable. So although we are using curly braces before we start our map functionalities, but when we are entering inside map functionality, it is again JSX, so we have to use the curly braces again over here. Now if we look at our browser, we are seeing the same, but the method is little bit different. Now we can store this in a variable, something like that. So let's take a variable constant name list, which is equal to same thing. I want to copy and paste, and instead of returning this, what I'm going to return, okay, I'm going to delete this one and also delete these files also, lines also. So return div. Inside div I'm going to use this variable that is also inside curly braces like this. Now if we look at our browser, also we are seeing the same result, but this time this method also gets changed from the previous one. Now what I can do is, I'll add one more list over here, which will be something more than a name, which will be a list of objects or array of objects. So constant persons equals to this array, and inside array I'm going to have some objects which will have ID. Basically I'm going to type as I want, so ID is 1, name is basically the first name John, and then skill would be React. And then I'm going to copy this object again and again. ID 1 is 2, that is 3, and instead of John I'm going to use Mary. Maybe the spelling is incorrect, but alright. Now instead of showing this name list, I'm going to take another constant which will have person list. So person list, which is equals to persons dot map, and inside map function I'm going to use the same method like we used in names. So person over here, and then @ symbol. Then what I'm going to return is, first one is h2, so h2 is basically I am, then the person name, person dot name. As you can understand, this person is basically the person of this each object in this array. So person dot name will be this name, and then what I am going to write again is a p tag, and sorry, cannot take right now, I'll take it later. because I'm going to return only one part, so I'm going to write it in one element or one tag. So I am this person and my skill is person dot skill. That's it. Now I'll change the skills also, so let it be Angular and no for this scenario. Now I have to return this, so I'm going to return, instead of this name list, I'm going to return this person list. Okay, so now it is returning as expected. So I am John and we need a space over here, so my skill is React. Now instead of using inside the same component, we should use another component which will be treated as a child component, and inside this child component we will pass this object as a parameter, this person object as a parameter. So how to do that? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create one more component and we'll name it as person.js. .js, and inside person.js I'm going to take again the same functional component. I'm going to copy this one and paste it over here. We don't need all these sections, so let me delete all this stuff. What we need to change this to person and person over here, and here I'm going to take a constant. This is constant, but we need a props over here, props. So constant person equals to props dot person, like this. And inside return method, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this parenthesis first, and inside parenthesis we'll have the return of div, and here I'm going to declare the same method which I have declared over here. Now I should close h2 over here, and I should have a p tag for my skill. Let me arrange it in correct way. Alright, now I should use this person in name list. So let's import that person from person, and then I'm going to use this tag or this component inside person list. So instead of h2 tag, I'm going to use this person component, and we should pass the property over here, which is person equals to person. Now we are seeing as expected, but there is an error. This error is saying that each child in list should have a unique key prop. So we have to use that key properties over here. So I'll use that key, which will be the person dot id. Now remember, this key property should be unique. The value of this key should be unique. Why it should be unique, I'll discuss about these key properties in our next class, but for now we should know that for this key property, value should be unique for each element. Now if I go back to our browser, as we can see, there is no more error. Now the last part of today's session, which is fragments. So I'm going to use this fragments over here. So also we have a little bit known about fragments, how fragments works in React JS, but today we are going to learn a little bit deep about fragments. So I'm going to create one component over here and I'll name it as fragment.js. So it will be again a functional component. So I'll copy from person component and paste it over here, and I change the name. So it will be like fragments. Same, we are going to export fragments, and inside fragments, what I'm going to return, I am a React developer, and I don't need this p tag. Also, or maybe we need a p tag, and I'll say I love coding. That's it. So as we have understood earlier that we need to return one single element in our return method. So that's why we are using always div tag. But right now, and also sometimes we have known about this fragment, which is empty tag. And there is also one concept of fragment, that is React dot fragment. I will tell you the difference between empty fragment and the React dot fragment. So let me call this fragment in our app.js, and also I don't need this props, so let's remove it. Fragments over here, fragments, and instead of name list I'm going to use fragments. Now it is working as expected, but there is one difference. I'll tell you what is the difference. Let me use it, a div over here again. And if you look at our element, as you can see, there is an extra div over here in this elements, but we don't want this extra div. So for that reason we are using fragment. Now if we look at our elements, let's go to root and then plus app. As you can see, there is no more extra parent div or parent container over here. It is same for the empty fragments also. Alright, now let's take another kind of fragment. So I'll create another component over here and I'll name it as table.js. Now again it will be a functional component, so I'll copy this from over here and paste over here and name it as table. Also I will return or export table like this. Now inside table, what I'm going to write a table tag over here. So table, and then inside table t body, and then tr, and for column I'm going to use a React component for these columns. So I need to create one component over here and name it as columns.js. Now it will be again a functional component, so I'll copy the same code over here and paste over here. Instead of table, I'll name it as columns. And inside columns I'm going to have a constant which is nothing but an array of objects. So inside object I'll have id 1 and title as React, and same it will be like node, and id will be 2. That's it. Now in return we are going to return empty fragment over here. So let's delete this table, and inside empty fragment, or let me first return div over here so that I can explain it in better way. And inside over here I'm going to take this curly braces and then items. Right now we have learned about this map function for listing, so I'm going to use that map, and then item with fat arrow symbol. Again I'm going to use React fragment, or maybe empty fragment again, and inside empty fragment I'm going to use td, which will contain item dot title. Alright, so now I have to call this inside table component. So let me call over here import columns from columns, which should work, but I'm expecting one error over here. Oh, I have not imported in our app.js, so let's import over there. So instead of fragments I'm going to have table from table.js, and over here it will be also table like this. Now if you see, we are expecting the same value in our browser, and but if you look at our element, what we will see that we are having table and then tbody. Inside tier we are having div, which is not correct way of using table. And also in console what we are seeing that first one is each child in list should have unique key of proc, which I have not added, and second is td cannot appear as a child of div, and div cannot appear as a child of tier. So this is this may show the correct result, but in a developer's way in console we are seeing the wrong message. So this is not correct way of expressing code. So let me correct this one. So for that role we need to add these fragments. So instead of div I'm going to use empty fragment over here, also over here empty fragment, and also we are using empty fragment over here. So let's use that key, which is basically that item.id. But as you can see, although I have used these key properties over here, it's still showing me some red errors. If I save this one, I'll definitely get this error, which is saying unexpected token, something like that. So it basically means empty fragments cannot contain this key property. So for that we can use react dot fragment like this, and if I save it, now there is no more error over here. And let's go back to our browser. We are seeing the same result, but there is no error in console Also in element, if we go back over here in app and then table and then tbody, tr and again td. So it is a very fine structure of table. There is no more incorrect way of structuring over here. So that's it for today's class, and we have focused on many things. First thing we focused on is the sending methods as a props. Second, we have understood that how to display list in our React, and lastly we have a detailed knowledge of using React fragments.